we want you to understand what we mean by internal aspects. Internal aspects are what I do with his energy, not necessarily what I do with my energy, although his energy does become my energy. And not what I do externally, nor do I mean anything hard to rationalize or hard to understand. So I don't mean anything woo-woo or anything mystical in the negative or pejorative sense of the word, not in its accurate understanding. And I don't mean anything that's antithetical to reason, although understanding it does not necessarily mean you can do it. Okay, so I want to draw some distinctions between some common mistakes that people and you might have regarding what are the internal aspects of the art. Okay? So a common one is that my biomechanical efficiency is understood as the internal aspects, because there's an underlying, I don't understand what internal aspects mean, but they sound good and I should have them, and they should make me better off having them than not having them. And so if I could do something where I feel powerful or where I appear powerful, that must be the internal aspects. No, it's just external biomechanical efficiency. And that is a part of your martial art. Okay, so an example of this is because I'm a bipedal machine with this kind of chain link axis running partway down my body, the way my structure is set up, where I will feel a lesser percentage of my force output potential being utilized. The larger muscle groups I use, the more of the rear posterior chain I use, and therefore the closer that I am to the front center line of my body, the more access I have to the rear posterior chain, those larger muscle groups, the smaller percentage I'm using of my force potential. You will be mechanically more efficient than if you didn't do that. But that is not the internal aspects of which we're speaking of, where I use his energy. So an example of this is if I don't let me pick my hand up. Don't let me pick it up. So if I try to pick my hand up, let's say I'll put my elbow further away from my body, and I try to pick my hand up. What happens is that my bicep gets isolated, and this movement becomes dependent upon the strength of my bicep. But if I move my elbow closer to my spine and in the center of my spine, then this move becomes very easy. You see how I did that? So we're gonna step out, elbow is on the side, here's my spine line, elbow's on the side, so on the yang shoulder line, and my elbow's away from my body, and you'll try to pick that up. Then move the elbow to at least the yin line, if not to the transitional line, and move your elbow close to your body, and then pick up the line. And you'll see, I am using less of my force output potential. Okay? So this is just an external biomechanical efficiency. It is not the internal aspect. So let's try that. Okay, the next thing you can do externally is you can play with the geometry of your two external frames. So in that last one, I'm just engaging more of the rear posterior chain. But you can couple that, or not couple it, with just a kind of, I have a better mechanical geometry than he does. So for example, the distal end of the lever is easier for me to move than when I'm over here by this elbow. That's why you use levers to move objects, okay? So that's kind of what happened when I brought myself closer. And maybe you made the mistake of lifting by going that way, but if you stay on this line where his lever is the longest, it gets even easier. So really, really try. I'm just gonna lift that part up. Well, it's even easier. Okay, so try it. Now, as I increase my biomechanical efficiency, I can also decrease his biomechanical efficiency as we go along. So in the last example, I was just using it as it was, but I can combine that with a continuing decreasing. So rather than just lift this here, what I'm going to do is employ multiple levers that keep getting that to weaken. Okay, so instead of lifting just here against his energy, I now start to go around his energy by just applying another lever at the elbow and another lever at the wrist. Okay, grab, and I'm just here, and it's just too easy. You can't hold it down. Hold it down. Cannot hold it down. Okay, try it. So right now I've done nothing to his energy other than overpower it. So this is not the internal aspects. But a lot of people go, wow, I feel so powerful. This must be the thing I don't understand. And so they try to make that Kokyu or that Aiki. It's not. It's just biomechanical efficiency. It's something every athlete does. Okay? Another thing that every athlete does is they don't waste any energy. So one of the biggest signs between a world-class athlete and a newbie is how much tension, or what would be mechanical retardation, they have in their movement. So you watch a world-class quality athlete and their movement looks effortless. Why? Because they're not flexing anything more than has to be flexed, and definitely they're not flexing anything that has nothing to do with the movement. But a beginner always retards their movement by overflexion or inappropriate flexion. So all this was levers, but you'll see a beginner will still do it quite tense. And what I'm going to do is the same thing without any unnecessary movement. Get a good grip? It's very easy. And that actually plays such a large role, even in Aikido, that you can get away with that first one that you couldn't get away with. Just same thing. Keep your weight down on it, and I flex, I feel very efficient. But I'm way out here, and just lift your hand. Or he's pushing down, and you're going to want to try, bring your elbows in, come up, and you see that's all that other stuff. Rear posterior chain, leverage, and a sounder geometry. But again, he's pushing down on it, and just the relaxation, and you can get it up without any of that other stuff, okay? So now you're going back to this drill, and just, let's have you first try it close. So you're going to do the relaxation, no flexion in the other sound biomechanical geometry. And as you're comfortable, you just get out. Don't be out more. Okay, let's try. Okay, so one of the reasons why the new athlete has unnecessary tension is they have anxiety. They have anxiety due to the lack of familiarity. Okay, so you might have anxiety as you try to do all your Aikido because someone's grabbing you, but you will get the same anxious induced flexion when you make a combatant out of them, someone that you're trying to overcome. So if I'm here and I'm going like, well, he was not letting me lift my hand. I already started, you don't realize it, but you already started flexing, okay? So one of the things you can do is imagine something different. So I'm not going to let my mind go into this threat, foe, overcome context. I'm changing my mind like there's something up there that I want, okay? Now, a lot of people think that because I'm using my imagination that this is then internal, this is not the internal aspects. I'm just using my imagination, okay? So this, the same one is here. So when he's pushing down, if you try to overcome him, you'll flex things that will stop your movement, right? So instead, just imagine your hands are floating up. Then we can do this one where he's on, and you can use your symmetrical hand. Like, I want to touch my nose, there's a fly on my nose, and with my two hands, I just am moving my hands towards my nose to touch that fly. I'm not trying to get him off my arm, okay? And again, what this imagination does is it helps the new person not enter into that threat, foe, overcome model, which will almost always induce unnecessary flexion. Once you know what relaxed motion feels like, you don't need your imagination. You can think whatever you want and get it to go. You can even think foe, threat, overcome, and you will still move correct. Okay? Okay, so at this point, I have done nothing external. This is all external stuff. Even though I use my imagination, I use my imagination with an external aim. It's not that these things are not a part of Aikido. It's that they're not the whole of Aikido. That is what is key. What part are they not the whole of? The internal aspects, okay? So you can get very high in your skill level or in your force output potential by doing these things, of course, because you're biomechanically sound. All right, so if we take Tenshin Nage, and it's the same thing, I'm going to have more biomechanical soundness the more that I'm engaging that rear posterior chain. So the closer my elbows are to me and to the center line, to my spine, the more mechanically efficient I am. The less tension I have in my arms, the more I'm going to be mechanically sound. So I'm going to do Tenshin Nage, it's the same thing. Arms are very loose, and he will feel a lot of force, even though the technique on my side has very little of my force output potential. This, however, is not internal. This is all external. Okay? So let's try it with these external elements. Go. Okay, again, as a beginner, you are manipulated by your mind. Hence Budo, hence the whole training, right? That I don't get manipulated by my ego tripartite, by the untrained functioning of my mind, okay? As a beginner, you're going to be manipulated by your mind. So in the same way as he is a foe and I have a task and I have to overcome him, you're going to bring tension into you. So in the same way as I'm doing the technique, right when you hit here, you feel his resistance, that's where you flex up and you forget the mechanical efficiency of tension-free movement. So it's instead of trying to throw him, use your imagination and brush some fly off the wall over there. My arm's doing nothing. Okay, try it again. Okay, so I've become biomechanically efficient. I have tension-free movement. The percentage of my force potential output is very, very small. I can launch them pretty good, but none of this is internal. All of this is external still. Just because I, as a beginner who is tension burdened or tension laden, I don't understand how that's possible, that doesn't make it internal. Okay, it is still external. But you're going to see that a few things happen with this that are not consistent with the art when this is my understanding not only of the art, but of its highest ideals, such as Kokyu and Aiki. All that I do in my biomechanically efficiency is make myself relatively powerful. There is no yin-yang reconciliation whatsoever. All I did with that biomechanical efficiency was yang the hell out of him. That is all you saw, okay? And that should be a clue that maybe as few of people who can actually achieve biomechanical efficiency, in light of that, does not make it right because I am not doing a yin-yang reconciliation. I'm simply overpowering my opponent. And that would be no different than if I weighed 75 to 100 pounds more than him. I had my hands out to the side away from my body, and I was tensing like an MFer, and I still overpowered him. It is still the same yang-yang clash, the same external movement. It is not the art. okay? Which is why if he weighed 100 pounds more than me, I probably would start to have problems with that, even though I could get him to come off my wrist or I could lift my hand efficiently. There is a mechanical ceiling to it because it is nothing more than a mechanical engine, okay? Kokyu and Aiki is something else, not that, okay? Any athlete does that, all right? Kokyu, Aiki, the internal aspects are what I do with his energy, not my external body, but maybe my internal body, maybe, okay? So, it's when he pushes and I am letting that energy come in and I do one or two of the aspects of the universe. I either separate things or I unite things, okay? If I separate things, I take that Kokyu and I put out a force value that is greater than his via his energy. So I add energy to his energy, or I put a force value that is equal to his. So I let his energy pass through me and come out equal to his energy, and that creates that communion or that adhesion. So we're going to take the same technique of Tenshinage, and we're going to do it in a internal way, okay? So what you're going to see is that he's not going to be ahead of me, and then I'm just throwing him that way. So I'm going to exaggerate it so you can see. Let's have you pull. So he's pulling, okay? He's pulling, and I'm going to start bringing him in. And his energy is going forward, and I'm going to be able to, as I bring him into my body, I'm going to adhere at different points of my body where he makes contact, and I'm going to turn him in space. So he's pulling. Go ahead and pull. This would be wrong. I'm going to adhere to him. And this energy is bouncing back and forth in him that makes him, he has to step to keep his balance. So he's pulling, no. Absorb, adhere, keep loading him up. So here is the communion, no. External, internal. Loading him up, and when I get to the top, I project it out. Absorb. Up to the top. Project out. So he's going to go the other way. You see, he's going the other way before the throw happens. Okay, try it. Okay, so open your hand, okay? And this is what I'm doing. Okay, now I'm not pulling him because that'll pull him into his front foot. You see? Remember, he's supposed to be pulling backwards. Okay? What I'm doing is his energy is grounded in my front foot, and then I'm vectoring it over here. And it becomes more like this. So, see his stance? It would be like him holding on to here. Okay? And I have a good base, and he pulls that energy. That's what makes him step. It's not me doing this and leading him. So he's pulling, pull. That's not it. Okay? I'm not pulling against his pull. He's going and I'm bouncing that energy off. That's what makes him take that step. Okay? And I just keep doing that in between. Keep bouncing, 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 and he either goes and stumbles or he moves his space and support. So, boom, boom. I keep moving it around, moving it around, moving it around, moving it around. Now he's on my arm up here. That becomes my next adhesion point. Not his grip that I try to fulcrum. Let's move away from the drill. So that's what I use, and this is what I use. Let go. But not by fulcruming or anything. I'm using this adhesion. The 2 adhesions. And then I'm going to load them onto my hip, and that becomes the next adhesion. So together, everything goes, whoop, come back. Everything goes, boom, pop. So just like in Kokyu yesterday, I'm going from the grip to this adhesion. From the grip, boom, to this adhesion. This is happening here too. So energetic, boom, get them on your inside of your arm. Then here, going this way, the inside of his grip, onto your hip, boom. Then the Kokyu projection, the separated energy of the universe. Okay, try it. If we go back to the external version where I'm just overpowering him this way, you see how he's standing straight up until you overpower him. So when you guys are in your Jiu-jitsu and the uke does not have to stay there to be overpowered, the technique does not work. Okay? Because he does not have to stay there for me to be overpowered. I'm just pushing the guy backwards. It doesn't work. So I had him pulling on me so you can see that he is coming forward by what I am doing, not because of what he does. Okay, so for example, let's say he's coming forward, I still don't go boom and I try to overpower this guy. So maybe my uke is not skilled in Jiu-jitsu, they don't smell that coming, and they don't counter it by either going under it or backing out, but maybe they're still too big, and I'm just hitting people. That's not Aikido, and it generally does not work. Okay? So I am bringing him in to another adhesion point. So you almost want to ignore the grip, find the inner arm on here, and then find the hip so that he is still going forward. I turn him from going forward, and then he heads back the other way, and then I enter in that yin space. So just like the other night, I'm doing Kokyu. I trade to the arm adhesion. He's going that way, and I step into that adhesion. I do not use the Iniyashi to shove him back. He needs to already be falling. So the same thing, he's going forward this time. And I'm doing the same thing. Not him standing straight. Right away he tilts and goes into the back outward position. So, I look right away, adhere, adhere, adhere. Okay, let's go. Now, from the point of view of Kihon Waza, the mechanical external stuff is very important. You do need to learn that. But like I said, it's not the whole of the art. And it is not the higher aspects of the art. The higher aspects of the art are these internalized energetic mechanics, not my external biomechanics. And in the same way that relaxed movement creates an efficiency in itself outside of your posterior chain engagement or center line utilization, you can get a lot of force output from that, and you don't need necessarily center line elbows or shortened levers or things like that. In the same way, when you have the internal aspects, even though the external aspects are important, when you have the internal aspects, you can get away with terrible external aspects. Okay? Now, that is only relevant though from the Kihon Waza point of view. From a tactical or real life application, that's a no-no because it's tactically unsound, okay? But you could be goofy. Go ahead, it doesn't matter, okay? I could be goofy and he pushes and I do the same thing. So I'll be on a bent over posture and I'll be on my toe. It doesn't matter because his energy's coming in me, and as long as I have any kind of greater mass that I can bounce it back and forth off, it works. So I don't need the full foot, I don't need midfoot, I don't need a bent knee, I don't need a lower center. I can be on my tippy toes in a goofy posture, and the energy still functions. Okay? So keep that in mind. It's not everything, but sometimes you can do without anything else.